So my name is Mariella, and I have a studio, pottery studio in Olympia. I do work under the name m.bueno. I'm going to give you a little tour of the studio. When you walk in the doors, to the right here is our little wedging table where we weigh clay and get it ready for throwing. Here I have my brand new slab roller. Normally I make pots on the wheel, but back in January I did a little residency and bought a slab roller when I got home. Over here is where we keep wet work that's just newly been thrown and needs to get trimmed. Over here we have our pottery wheels. I throw on the one on the right and my studio assistants throw on the one on the left. We've also got some storage, more storage over here. This area is our shipping and packing area where we keep all of our materials. On this side, we have some inventory of pots that we've made but haven't been glazed, and more packing materials. Here we've got some finished work. And then out here is our little kiln pad where we've got our bisque kiln to the right, and some shelves are also new, pug mill, and then our big glaze kiln to the left. That's it. Maybe I'll just come back over here really quick. When we started, or when I started shipping, I had used a lot of bubble wrap, which I still sometimes use, though it's not my favorite. And a couple of years ago, we switched to this paper system, which is called RanPack, and then we get it from a place up in Summit. And this enables us to not use any plastic packing materials. I also have this paper tape machine. So that way when you get a box from me, it has these eco-fill peanuts and this paper tape so that you can just throw the whole thing in the compost. Everything that we use is either recycled or compostable. And that's a choice that we made because, it seems important to me to try to, as someone that uses raw materials and puts things out into the world, to be as sustainable as possible. And I know it's hard to sort of take that leap, but as your business grows, if you have the opportunity to make some of these choices and be thoughtful about it, I think it can be really meaningful. Last year, we also added solar panels to our house because that's where my studio is. And I mean, in this area, we don't get as much out of solar panels as they do in sunnier places, but it still makes a pretty big difference. And we were able to use some of the tax credits, but it also feels really, to me, like a positive step to try to think about the output of the studio and how we can offset some of the resources that we use and put them back into the community. The pug mill that's out there too, we just got, it's a big step for us, but we recycle all of our trimmings. And it's really, recycling clay is one of the most challenging things that people do in a studio. A lot of people don't like to do it because it's a lot of work. But up until recently, the output of the studio was significant enough that it felt like a big, good step to take to try to do it more professionally. But the timing was a little off. It's hard to buy a brand new piece of equipment right before a massive economic downturn. So fingers crossed that we bounce back from that. So yeah, that was my my spiel about sustainability and stuff. I think that that's something that I try to keep in my mind, especially because, the material that we work with in the studio really all comes from the ground. So it feels like this sort of hippie full circle thing to kind of be thinking about the earth and the environment as we work. Yeah, I'm going to stop for 1 second and see if anyone has any questions really quick before I move on.
I'd like to see your work if possible, through different steps in your process. Is that possible?
Sure.
Great.
We buy all of our clay from Clay Art Center in Tacoma. The clay that we use is called Idaho Buff SM. They not only are they awesome people to buy from and local, I think that they source at least some of their materials regionally. So a lot of their clays are named after from the places that they're from. So this one's from Idaho. They also have several clays from Oregon. So this is where we store it. Once we use it, or once we're ready to use it, we bring it over here and then we weigh it out. This is our wedging table. So we actually, one of the things that we worked on this last week was to make a fancy chart that has all of our measurements. So we weigh it here and then we shape it into balls. Over here, this is the wheel that I use. It's always this dirty. We try not to, like, in some studios, like especially if you're in a community studio, they ask you to clean up your station every time you work. But because we only use one clay body here, we just leave everything, or we tidy up a little bit, but we leave everything sort of like this, so we don't use so much water because it would just be like a huge waste. So after things get measured out here, these on the side are bats. Lindsay, my studio assistant, actually likes to stack them up real nice. Normally, I hate to admit, but I'm the pig in the studio, so I sort of stacked them up in her honor yesterday. So I throw on this wheel here. I have this mirror, which I'm not sure you can see. I have this mantra that my friend Daniel gave me. I don't know if you guys can read it. And this mirror is so that I can see the backside from whatever I'm making. So even though I'm throwing from this side, I actually mostly look at whatever I'm making from the backside. These are some things that I made this week. We have a few orders left over. When they get thrown, this is one of the colanders right here. And it's still pretty wet. I threw that last night. This is one I threw the day before. I'm going to trim that today. I punched some holes into it. Once it gets a little bit harder like this, it's ready to trim. And then after that, this is a pour over that I made. It gets to this like really super hard stage. This is actually what they call bone dry. So this is actually the most delicate that clay is. When it's wet, you can kind of like move it around a little bit. But when it gets to this stage, it can actually is super, super delicate. Over here, we've got some other plates. We use a variety of sizes of bats. I like to throw plates on these large, wide bats. But because there's normally a couple of us in the studio, we primarily throw on these smaller bats and then put things that are in process over here. And then after they get fired for the first time, which is normally in this kiln right here, then that gray clay looks like that. It's this like funny pink color. And at this stage, things are pretty heavy duty. They don't get like as you can see, we can stack them up and they can stay like this kind of for a long time. And I like to leave things like this because we glaze in a couple different colors. So this enables us to be a little bit flexible. So if someone orders a mug off Etsy and they want it to be blue, white, or black, then I can glaze it to order. I unloaded the kiln this morning and I have some things here that are going to go out to some Etsy orders. Up until recently, we mostly just did black and white, and we would do a little bit of blue in person, but I just started making it available online just to kind of shake things up a little bit. And then over here we have some finished product. So over here we've got some tumblers and a bud vase, blue mug. This is a spoon rest. This is an incense holder, juicer. I'm often, or at least occasionally, work with clients. Like a client wanted a funnel. Not really sure what they're going to use a ceramic funnel for, but it's kind of fun to just be like, I don't know, can I make a funnel out of clay? And you know, I guess if you're going to have a funnel that you have to look at every day, it's nice to not be one of those like plastic red things. And then there's someone in Spokane who has an organic skincare line, and I'm trying to develop some work with her. So I don't normally work in porcelain, but it seems fun to try to branch out and do some new things with some new materials. I don't normally work with porcelain because porcelain comes from pretty far away. And so the porcelain that I like the best comes from New Zealand. And New Zealand, I don't know, it's beautiful, but I don't really love the idea of working with material that comes from like 7,000 miles away. So that clay is actually was developed by Clay Art Center, and it's called Rainier. And I haven't actually talked to them about the formulation, but I'm really hoping that it has something that's more local. So I hope that was helpful.
Mariella, what was the name of the paper company you were ordering from?
Well, the one that I buy boxes from locally is called Corpac. That's Corrrpac, and they're over on the west side, sort of in that Mottman industrial area. And then the other paper that we wrap things in is from a company in Auburn called Summit, and that's a proprietary like die cut paper, and you can buy it online, but it's really expensive. You can like find it on Etsy for like $50 a roll. But when you buy it from Summit, they'll like loan you a machine. So I don't own that machine. I lease it. I had to pay like a $50 deposit, but it's great because we don't use. We sometimes still use that plastic stuff for plates because the cushioning is a little bit better, and plates are really heavy and they're hard to ship. But almost everything else that we do, especially all of the wholesale, is with that paper, which is actually it's pretty popular with ceramicists. So I found it through, I think, either Heath or East Fork. Yeah.
So Mariella, how did you develop your aesthetic? Because you have a really distinctive style. Was that in your head when you first started? And then also, I've never known you to be a potter. I remember at one point, I think you took classes at the Olympia Center, and then maybe you went to Arbutus. So can you describe your journey, I guess?
Sure.
To, how you became a potter.
So I took class at the Olympia Center. And that class, I assume I'm pretty sure they still have them, but that class was so popular at the time, and it was nice because it had like a variety of different aspects. So the person who used to teach it was primarily a hand builder, but she was also very proficient at wheel throwing, and I took a wheel throwing class there, or we had like a wheel class day, and then the next day I bought a wheel off Craigslist. It was just like one of those, like, wow, this is amazing. I love this. And that's when I started in the corner of my garage. I drove up to like Everett or something and bought a 50-year-old Shimpo. And, you know, with wheel throwing, it is something that just requires hours and hours of practice. So I never really was able to take like a wheel throwing class. But I don't know, I mean, yeah, it's like a trial and error. So after that, as Stephanie, as you and I know each other, like I used to work for a record label and for a long time, almost 20 years. And I also was like doing other stuff in our like community music scene. And I got involved with Arbutus because I just felt like after 20 years, I was ready to maybe do something different. And, you know, the music business was changing a lot, and Kay is this amazing place, but they had to change with the times too. So the things that I used to do when I worked with them had always been evolving over time, but Calvin had made the decision to like stop working with as many new artists because there just wasn't enough opportunity to for that to make sense anymore. So my best friend Pamela worked at Arbutus, and she was teaching a class, and she let me teach with her and to just see if I would like it. And I was trying to transition out of having a full-time job. And so after doing that a couple of times with her, at that time Arbutus only had 3 pottery wheels, and Pamela had just received a grant, or Pamela had written a grant that Arbutus received to buy some more wheels for the studio, and we helped source some other wheels from another potter who was like retiring. And so now I think that studio has like, I think 10 or 11 wheels, and I started teaching there just wheel throwing. And it was great to be around other people who were excited to learn and to be in a community environment, like, because I think I was maybe 39 or 40 when I took my first pottery class. So I didn't have like college ceramics friends. I didn't know a lot of people. Actually, I didn't know anybody that really did anything with ceramics. I mean, I met Nicole through Arbutus. Pamela, she's primarily a metalsmith, but we did some stuff together, and it was really a way for me to like meet and create a community in this new art field, which was huge for me. And I did that for a couple of years, but then I was lucky enough that I was just too busy with my own practice. So I just work full time from home now. I have 2 studio assistants at this moment. In the busier time of year, I have had up to 4 studio assistants who work 5 days a week in my studio. Right now I have 2 young women who are here who ship and glaze and make and help me do a bunch of different organizing things. So, and they're both ceramicists. So they both make their work on their own and try to sell work. And then, so, I mean, we don't talk about it all the time, but like, I hope that, or it's my hope that I can be like a resource for other people who are starting businesses, who, want to do something new or have questions, Really quick, my aesthetic, it's sometimes it takes a minute to develop some new products, but when I first started making things with clay, I only worked with porcelain, and I chose the clay that I work with now because I really like the way that it looks. And I almost always, like, this is a cup that I'm just drinking out of. This is not a current style, but this is like an unglazed part. And I almost always leave part of the, whatever I make unglazed, whether it's the bottom or the rim. And that's because I want people to connect with the material. I know that sounds sort of like dorky, but, you're buying something and you're using something that's made with someone's hands, that's like made from, like, we actually buy bagged dirt and like we take it from lumps and we make it into something that you can like drink your coffee every day in. And I think that to me, that's really significant. So the style, in terms of the style, like I like to be able to see the material. So this thing that I had shown you before, this is actually a black clay. This is not glazed at all. We found a downed madrona tree, and we're going to cut some branches off, or we cut a couple branches off. So this is just going to be a wall hanging that's just unglazed clay. And a lot of the work that I do shows that material. And some people don't like it because it can be kind of rough. But I think, aesthetically, that's something that I appreciate. And also, we're doing the blue thing right now, but for all these years, I've pretty much only made things in black and white. I pretty much still only make things in black and white. I only wear black. I'm just really into black and white. My house is black and white. Everything I own is probably black and white. And so in that way, that aesthetic choice was not super difficult for me to grapple with. I think you have to just make things that speak to you. You know, when I first, like, I make art now, and like I had an art show last year, and even though not everything was pots, like pretty much everything was circles, and I still make exclusively work about circles. And yeah, I just, you know, you do a thing, and maybe there's something to that, but I used to worry that wasn't, I don't know, interesting or cool, but I mean, at some point you kind of just have to say, like, fuck it, I'm just making the thing that's interesting to me. And you know, when I started making art there, like especially in pottery, there's like a very like pots that are very like have a lot of decals or a lot of color or are really intricate. I was just looking at these incredible cups that are like someone cuts out the side of them and makes the inside look like a geode by hand. And then there's gold around it, and it's all colored, and also the outside looks like marble. And while I can appreciate that the artistry and the skill that goes into making that kind of work, that work doesn't speak to me. So I just have to make the thing that I find compelling. And, you know, like a lot of the artwork that I find is very simple. So, yeah.
Can you talk at all about your experience at Penland?
Oh, yeah. So Penland School of Craft is a craft school in the mountains of North Carolina. And I've been there a few times. The first time I went was my friend Lina Sheaf, who is an artist and at the time was focusing her work on weaving, had just been there. And because when I started, I didn't go to college for art. I wanted to like expand my skills, and I didn't want to go back to school. Like I thought about going to SPSCC or Evergreen, but at the time I still had a full-time job. And Penland has these 2-week classes that you go and you live on campus and you eat there, and you're just submerged into the whatever discipline you're taking. And they have ceramics, and they have textiles, printmaking, iron, metalsmithing, woodworking. I think there's 12 different studios. And the first time I went, I got a work study scholarship. And so I think it was like maybe half price. It was like $1,000, which is kind of expensive. I understand that that's, I mean, half price at $1,000 is still expensive, and you have to go all the way to North Carolina. But it was a huge opportunity. It continues to be a huge opportunity for me to be around other adult makers who are interested in ceramics. And you spend all day, every day with these people for 2 weeks. And you get to be outside of your studio, or in a studio if you don't have your own studio, and you have everything provided for you. And the instructors are full-time artists who are experts in their field. So, you know, there is this kind of camaraderie that you can get from an experience like that. I mean, it's like summer camp for adults, which is sort of funny. But I've made some really good friends that way. And so I went the first time for wheel throwing, and the second time I went for hand building. And then I went last year again for the third time to do a slip casting workshop. And then this winter I went for an artist residency, because they have art residencies too. So in almost every time I've gone, I've gone every time for something different. This last time I did a wood firing, and I had never participated in one of those before. That's not true. I had done one wood firing before, but like, you know, when I did the slip casting, and like I had never done any slip casting. I've done a little bit of slip casting when I got home, but that's not something that I have access to here. And it was a way for me to like think outside of the way that I normally work into a new way of using the materials and a new way of like working. So I can't say how invaluable I think those are. And the age range of people there is like really vast. There's a lot of like older retired folks there, lots of younger people right out of college, but most of the classes have like, you know, 15 or 20 people in them, and you really get to make some interesting connections that way. So I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, there's several of them, or craft schools and if you had opportunity to find one in your discipline, I highly suggest going if you can get away.
You know, you created that giant globe shape there.
Oh yeah.
What was that? Was that hand coiled, or how did you make that? I
Yeah,
wish I could see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna, hopefully when the knitting mills reopens, I'm gonna show that piece there. I did do some hand-built pieces. That is, I threw the bottom of it, the base of it, and then I coiled the rest, which is not the kind of work I normally make. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's like a really large format vase. I don't normally make that kind of work because that kind of work is hard to sell, and it takes a lot of time, and it not only does it take time, it takes space, and not only in my studio but also like in the kiln. And then I just have this like giant orb sitting around. As anyone that like makes art for fun, you just like end up with a lot of stuff, which is one of the reasons why I feel pretty lucky, because when I started doing ceramics, you know, I was like hanging out in my garage here and making up the stuff to kind of like get good at pottery. And then, but then I had like just a ton of stuff. And my friends who had a space downtown were having a craft fair, and they were like, hey, you should come and sell your stuff at this craft fair. And I was like, what? No one's going to want to buy any of this junk. And thankfully I was wrong. And that was my first craft fair, and I kind of haven't stopped since.
It's Lynette here again. I really I really like your texture based, you know, your direction and your, you know, you can see the light much more. I agree with your aesthetic. I really like your aesthetic, just because the light shade thing is really delightful. I was wondering, what's the best way that people might find your pottery? What is the best avenue for them to search?
Right now, I mostly sell, well, for those of you who live in Olympia, when you can leave your house again, you can find my pottery in town a few places. Fleuret, the florist that's at the 222 Market, Sound Vision, which is right across from the food trucks. And then my husband has a coffee shop called Bar Francis, and I almost always have pottery in those three places. Right now, you can find my work on Etsy, and I think if you found this link through Instagram or through Facebook, Nicole probably linked me that way. So you can find me on the internet there. And I always try to do local delivery. So even if you're in Olympia or Seattle or Portland, most of the time, if you order and we're not on lockdown, I would try to send things to you. And unfortunately, we're not having studio tour in May like we had hoped. But again, once we're allowed to leave our houses, I actually really do like studio visits. I love to creep on other people's studios. I have loved this series. I liked going, Lynette, I had been to your house before, but it was great to see your workspace. Same thing with Susan, who I am a huge fan of. I love Susan's work. So part of wanting to do all this is to like let people into my studio, because I like to see people's studios. I like to see their work. I like to see how they make work. And so if you're ever interested in just coming by, that's always an option too.
Mariella, I remember yesterday when we were prepping, you showed me that print.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, so I'm going to show you guys this print, which I think my friends at Buy Olympia, or I'm sorry, they're not called that anymore. They're called Land Gallery. They had a postcard show for their 20-year anniversary, and this was one of the postcards. Unfortunately, was sold out. Can you guys see that?
Up a little closer, maybe.
Okay, it says, do what you love, and then it says, never work a day, and you'll never work a day in your life. And then they crossed that out, and they wrote, do what you love, and you'll work super fucking hard all the time with no separation or boundaries, and also take everything extremely personally. Which I don't know. The thing that Nicole and I were talking about yesterday was that it's sort of this, like, what I perceive to be like a myth, I guess is the best way to put it, that we have to find art and like as young people in like elementary school or junior high or high school, and we have to be these like wunderkinds, and like if we don't figure it out early on, then it's like too late for us. And then also at the same time, this other myth that like if you find something that you love to do, that you'll just be like, you're just like running through a field of flowers, like frolicking all day long in the joy of this thing that you're doing. And both of those things I think are bullshit. I mean, like I had said just a couple minutes ago, I didn't start pottery until I was like 40. Not that like 40's old, but you know, it wasn't like I had it all figured out. I absolutely did not have it figured out. I feel like right now I still don't have it figured out. Like sometimes when I think about doing a studio tour, I'm like, how could I do a studio tour? I'm totally a phony. No one's going to believe that I'm an artist. I mean, a lot of times when people ask me what I do for a living and I say that I'm like either an artist or a ceramicist, they like smile and nod. And then in their minds, I can tell that what they think I really am is a housewife. And, you know, I think that there are all these ideas about how we become artists and how we make artwork that speaks to us, and it prevents a lot of people from even starting. And you know, being an artist and having a full-time or having a business is a full-time job. I mean, last week my studio assistants were gone and I like packed boxes for 12 hours. One, because I'm not very good at packing boxes anymore, but it was just like really busy, and I used to work 12 hours a day all the time, and it kind of stunk. But I'm also really thankful that I have a business that I can do that, but it's not all the like amazing sunshine and rainbows all the time. And you just, you know, have to really not to do your best to quiet those voices that tell you that the work you're making is not interesting. That's a thing that I feel like I make really plain things. So not plain, maybe that's not the right word, but I, you know, like I have to feel like I'm not making things to like win some like weird popularity contest that I lost like 35 years ago. I'm just making things because they're the things that I make, and that has to be good enough for me. And you know, this idea that there are all these censors out there that are like telling us not to make things because we're not like Jimi Hendrix or Beethoven or Picasso or some other bullshit, then it prevents us from just making things that are meaningful to us. And I bring this up because I hear people, like, especially when I used to teach classes at Arbutus, women especially just being like so self-deprecating, to feel like they don't belong and that they don't have the right to like start new and to like make things and to be artists and whatever that means to them. And if you just give yourself the opportunity or the chance to try it, you might find that there's something out there that you really love.
Mhm. God, good word.
Mariella, I'm so glad I had my camera turned off because I just cried like a baby. I'm still crying because I had no idea really that Arbutus played that role in your life, and I've never seen your studio, and I'm just thrilled, and I really needed to be thrilled. So thank you for sharing that story, unity, and you're doing exactly what Arbutus would do, and I'm really, really, really grateful to hear your story. So I'm going to turn the camera back off so you guys don't have to look at me. Thank you.
Stacey, I have to say that it means so much to me. I mean, it meant so much to me at the time that like a place like Arbutus would even give me an opportunity. Like I said, there are so many ways in which even every day I feel like I wasn't good enough, or that I didn't have, that I shouldn't do it, or there, because I don't have a ceramics degree or something. And that was like a way in which Arbutus really helped to support me. And even now, I mean, this is an emotional time. I have to say that when my friends order things from Etsy, I totally cry. Like, I was writing some thank you notes today, and like just knowing that my friends are out there, like even if I can't see their faces, even if I'm not talking to them, that they're, you know, they bought a mug or they bought a spoon rest, and like I'm writing them a thank you note, and I'm writing thank you so much. But really at the time it means so much. It means so much. And I'm just glad that we live in a place that helps to foster this kind of community. Well, it looks like we're over time. I know these things are supposed to be half an hour, and for someone that's as shy as I am, I definitely can talk a lot. So thank you everyone for listening to me ramble for these last 40 minutes. And I hope that you had a great time seeing my studio. I'm so glad that Nicole invited me to do this, and I hope that more of you guys will do this, because it's just, even though it is absolutely nerve-wracking to be on this end, I have loved watching you guys in your studios, and it's brought me so much joy these last couple weeks. And I would have never thought that like a weird video meeting would be so awesome, but it really is. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mariella.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Let's
Thank
hear it
you.
from Mariella.